Good evening. You're listening to Black Grave, a collection of dark stories and unsettling mysteries designed to help you drift into the night. So relax and listen carefully. Story 1.
Tonight's story begins with a doll, not the kind found in horror movies, but a simple child's toy, displayed quietly inside a temple in Japan. A doll with black hair, a pale face, and eyes that many visitors refuse to look into for too long, because according to legend, the hair of the Okiku doll is still growing. Even now, rain falls softly outside the temple walls, while visitors move carefully through the old wooden halls. Some arrive out of curiosity, others arrive because they already know the story, and a few leave believing there is something truly wrong with the doll locked behind the glass. The story begins over 100 years ago, in 1918, in the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. A 17-year-old boy named Eikichi Suzuki visited the city of Sapporo during a local exhibition. Like many crowded festivals of the time, the streets were filled with lights, music, food stalls, and small souvenir shops. Somewhere among them, Eikichi found a doll. It wore a traditional kimono, with smooth black hair cut neatly at shoulder length. Its face was soft and childlike. At first glance, completely harmless. Eikichi bought the doll as a gift for his 2-year-old sister. Her name was Okiku, and from the moment she received it, she adored it. She carried it everywhere. She dressed beside it, slept beside it, spoke to it as though it were alive. The family soon noticed something strange. Okiku treated the doll less like a toy and more like a friend. Sometimes, they would hear her whispering to it alone in her room late at night. At other times, they claimed she became upset if anyone touched it without permission. Still, nothing seemed unnatural, until Okiku suddenly became ill. Records differ on the exact cause. Some say influenza. Others claim a sudden unexplained sickness. But by 1919, the little girl was dead. The Suzuki family was devastated and unable to let go of their daughter completely. They placed her favorite doll upon the family altar. Every day, they prayed before it, burned incense beside it, and remembered the little girl they had lost. Then, the hair began to grow. At first, the family believed they were imagining it. The doll originally had short hair, a neat bob cut resting above the shoulders. But slowly, over time, the hair extended lower and lower. Weeks passed, then months. The doll's black hair continued growing, as though it belonged to a living child. The family became terrified. Some believed Okiku's spirit had entered the doll after death. Others believed grief itself had twisted their minds. But no matter what they believed, the hair continued growing. Eventually, the Suzuki family moved away from Hokkaido, and fearing the doll carried something unnatural, they entrusted it to Monenji Temple in the town of Iwamizawa. The priests accepted it, and according to temple legend, they witnessed the same phenomenon. The hair kept growing. Over the decades, the doll remained there, silent, motionless, watching, its hair periodically trimmed by temple caretakers, only to grow again. Visitors soon began hearing stories. Some claimed the doll's expression changed depending on where they stood. Others swore the mouth appeared slightly open, as though the doll were attempting to speak. One rumor spread further than the others. According to legend, priests examining the doll closely once discovered what appeared to be human teeth inside its mouth. The story spread quickly across Japan. Soon, Okiku became one of the country's most infamous paranormal legends. A haunted doll supposedly possessed by the spirit of a dead child. And unlike most ghost stories, the doll physically existed. People could visit it, see it, stand directly in front of it, which somehow made the legend even more disturbing. Because myths are easy to dismiss until they sit silently behind glass, staring back at you. As years passed, paranormal investigators, journalists, and skeptics attempted to explain the mystery. Some argued humidity caused the hair fibers to expand. Others claimed the original haircut had simply been uneven. But those explanations failed to answer one unsettling detail. The hair continued requiring trims, again and again and again. Some visitors say standing near the doll creates an overwhelming feeling of sadness. Others describe headaches, unease, or the strange sensation of being watched. Temple workers rarely speak publicly about the doll now, but according to local stories, certain caretakers refuse to remain alone with it at night. One former visitor claimed they took a photograph of Okiku, only to later discover the image distorted beyond recognition. Another said the doll's eyes appeared differently in every picture taken. And perhaps the most disturbing part of all is how ordinary the doll looks. There are no exaggerated features, no monstrous face, no obvious sign of horror. Just a child's doll, quietly sitting in a temple, waiting, which may be why the story unsettles so many people. Because the fear doesn't come from what the doll does. It comes from the possibility that something may truly still be inside it. Late at night, when rain falls against the temple windows, it becomes easier to understand why the legend survived for so long. A lonely child, a grieving family, an object filled with memory, emotion, and death. Some believe haunted objects are created not by demons, but by powerful human attachment. And if that is true, perhaps Okiku never left the doll at all. Perhaps a part of her remained there, watching silently through glass for over a century. Even now, visitors continue traveling across Japan to see the doll for themselves, some out of curiosity, others searching for proof. But many leave the temple strangely quiet afterward, because whether you believe the story or not, there is something deeply unsettling about standing in front of a doll that may still be growing human hair. Tonight, the rain continues outside, the temple grows silent, and somewhere in the darkness, the Okiku doll still waits patiently behind glass, watching every visitor who stops to stare, and perhaps waiting for someone else to take her home.
Story 2.
Tonight's story begins in a quiet house, on a rainy night, with a babysitter and a clown statue. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The parents were wealthy, the neighborhood was calm, and the children upstairs had already fallen asleep. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. Thunder rolled somewhere far in the distance, the kind of peaceful sound that makes a house feel safe. But before leaving for dinner, the mother hesitated. She stood near the front door for a moment, then quietly asked the babysitter something strange. She asked if she would mind covering the clown statue in the downstairs living room before the children woke up in the morning. The babysitter laughed softly. The clown statue was unsettling, but harmless. It stood silently in the corner of the room, life-sized, wearing old colorful clothing, with pale skin and dark painted eyes. The babysitter agreed. After the parents left, the house became still. Only the sound of rain remained. She cleaned the kitchen, checked on the children, then settled into the living room to watch television. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted back toward the clown. Something about it felt wrong. Not frightening exactly, just uncomfortable. Its smile looked too realistic. Its eyes seemed focused, watching. She tried ignoring it, but eventually, the feeling became impossible to shake. So she stood, walked across the room, and grabbed a blanket from the sofa. As she moved toward the clown, she slowed. The closer she got, the stranger it looked. The painted face seemed cracked and worn, as though it had been sitting there for years. Its hands rested awkwardly at its sides, and the eyes didn't quite seem painted anymore. Trying to laugh it off, she threw the blanket over the statue and returned to the sofa. Minutes passed. Then her phone rang. It was the father checking in. She told him everything was fine, then casually mentioned she had covered the clown statue like they asked. There was silence on the line. Then the father spoke quietly. "We don't own a clown statue." The babysitter froze. The father's voice suddenly became urgent. "Take the children and leave the house right now." Before she could respond, a loud creak echoed somewhere upstairs. The line went dead. The babysitter stared toward the staircase. The house suddenly felt different, no longer peaceful, no longer safe. The rain outside seemed louder now. The thunder closer. Slowly, she turned back toward the living room corner. The blanket had slipped partially to the floor, and beneath it, she could see movement. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. The clown had changed position, its head tilted slightly sideways now, as though studying her. The babysitter's chest tightened. She stood frozen for several seconds, trying desperately to explain what she was seeing. Perhaps the blanket slipped. Perhaps she imagined the movement. But deep down, another thought had already entered her mind. What if it was never a statue? Another creak sounded upstairs, then footsteps. Soft, slow, moving above her. The children. She ran toward the staircase, heart pounding violently. Every shadow in the hallway now seemed alive. She reached the children's room and pushed the door open. Both children were asleep, peaceful, unaware. But something else caught her attention. The bedroom closet door was open, just slightly. Darkness waiting inside. Then, from downstairs, came the sound of laughter. Low, wet, breathing laughter, not loud, not human. The babysitter grabbed the youngest child first, then shook the older one awake. The rain battered harder against the windows now. Thunder cracked above the house. Downstairs, something heavy moved slowly across the floorboards. The children began crying. She whispered for them to stay quiet. Then the footsteps started climbing the stairs, slow, measured, wood creaking beneath enormous weight. One step, then another. The babysitter locked the bedroom door. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she searched for her phone. No signal. The footsteps stopped directly outside. Silence. Then, 3 soft knocks. The children buried themselves beneath the blankets. The babysitter backed away slowly, and then the doorknob began turning, very slowly, as though whoever stood outside already knew there was nowhere left to run. The knocking stopped, but the breathing remained, heavy, wet, almost excited. Then suddenly, nothing. Silence filled the hallway again. No footsteps, no movement, only rain. The babysitter waited several long seconds before approaching the door carefully. She pressed her eye against the crack. The hallway was empty, but at the far end, near the staircase, she saw something disappear around the corner. A pale hand. Then another sound drifted upward from downstairs. The front door opening. Police sirens suddenly flashed outside the windows. Blue and red light flooded the room. The babysitter nearly collapsed with relief. Officers rushed inside moments later. The children were carried downstairs safely. But when police searched the house, they found nothing. No clown statue, no intruder, nothing at all. Until one officer noticed muddy footprints beneath the living room window. Large footprints, leading toward the woods behind the property. The babysitter later learned something terrifying. Months earlier, a psychiatric patient had escaped from a nearby institution, a man known for violent attacks, who often dressed as clowns. The family never returned to the house after that night, and according to local rumors, the babysitter refused to speak about what she saw ever again. But there is one detail that still disturbs people most. When police searched the children's bedroom, they discovered muddy footprints beneath the beds, as though someone had been hiding there, watching the children sleep, long before the babysitter ever arrived. Tonight, the rain continues outside, and somewhere, in another quiet house, another babysitter may be staring across a dark room at something pretending to be harmless.
Story 3.
Tonight's story begins beneath a cold desert sky, where the wind moves across empty land, and something watches from the darkness. Deep within Navajo legend, there are stories rarely spoken aloud, stories of witches, of forbidden rituals, and creatures capable of becoming something else entirely. They are called Skinwalkers. And according to those who believe the legends, simply speaking about them can invite their attention. Rain falls softly tonight, far away from the dry deserts where these stories began. Thunder rolls in the distance, and somewhere beyond the reach of firelight, something moves through the dark, wearing a shape that almost looks human. The legend of the Skinwalker comes from Navajo folklore. Unlike ghosts or wandering spirits, Skinwalkers are said to be human beings, witches who gained supernatural abilities through terrible acts. It is believed they can transform into animals, wolves, coyotes, owls, deer, or something far worse, something that only imitates what it sees. According to old stories, they move unnaturally, too fast, too silent, and sometimes their bodies appear wrong, eyes reflecting where no light exists, limbs bending strangely, voices almost human, but never quite right. Many Navajo elders avoid discussing them entirely. Some refuse to even say the word, because legends say skinwalkers are drawn toward fear, toward those who speak about them, and perhaps that is why so many stories begin the same way, with someone hearing something outside their home at night, something pretending to be familiar. Years ago, a family living near the Arizona desert shared a story that still circulates online today. According to the account, the family had just moved into an isolated house near tribal land. At first, everything seemed peaceful. The desert was quiet, almost too quiet. At night, the father would sit outside smoking while the children slept. He later described the silence as unnatural. No insects, no movement, only wind. Then one evening, the dogs began barking toward the darkness beyond the fence line, aggressively, terrified. The father grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. At first, he saw nothing, just endless desert beneath moonlight. Then, something moved. Far beyond the property, a tall shape standing on two legs, perfectly still, watching the house. The father assumed it was a person, until the thing dropped onto all fours and ran into the darkness with impossible speed. The dogs refused to leave the porch after that night. Days passed. Then came the voices. Late at night, the family began hearing knocking at the windows, soft at first, then louder. Sometimes, they heard their names whispered outside, voices belonging to relatives who lived miles away. One night, the youngest son claimed he heard his grandmother calling him from outside his bedroom window. The problem was, his grandmother had died years earlier. The father searched outside repeatedly, but found nothing except strange tracks in the dirt. Not animal tracks, not human, something in between. Long, thin, distorted. Then came the smell, rotting meat carried by the wind. The family said the odor appeared moments before strange activity began, always accompanied by silence. No birds, no insects, nothing alive making sound. One evening, during a violent thunderstorm, the father saw something standing beside the road while driving home. At first, it looked like a deer, but as the headlights reached it, he realized the proportions were wrong. Its legs were too long, its eyes reflected white, and its face almost looked human. The creature stood motionless as rain poured around it. Then slowly, it smiled. The father drove past in panic, but when he looked into the rearview mirror, the creature was running behind the truck, on two legs, faster than the vehicle should have allowed. After that night, the family claimed the activity worsened, scratching sounds on the roof, footsteps circling the house, voices mimicking family members. One of the children woke screaming after seeing a figure standing inside the hallway, tall and thin, wearing what looked like animal skin stretched over a human body. The family eventually abandoned the property entirely. Years later, the house still sits empty. Locals avoid the area after dark, and some claim strange figures are occasionally seen watching passing cars from the desert hills. But perhaps the most disturbing skinwalker stories come from those who encountered something pretending to be human. Truck drivers crossing remote highways at night have reported hitchhikers with unnatural faces. Campers describe hearing friends call for help from deep woods, only to discover the real person asleep nearby. Hunters speak of animals standing upright, watching silently from tree lines, and across the internet, thousands of similar encounters continue appearing. Different people, different places, yet the same details repeat again and again. Voices, eyes, mimicry, and movement that does not belong to anything natural. Some believe these stories are simply fear shaped by isolation and darkness. Others believe skinwalker legends evolved to warn people away from dangerous places. But believers insist the creatures are real, not monsters, not spirits, something worse. human beings who surrendered their humanity for power. And according to Navajo tradition, once someone becomes a skinwalker, they are no longer truly human at all. Tonight, rain continues falling softly outside, thunder drifts across the distance, and somewhere beyond the safety of the light, something may already be standing silently in the dark, watching, waiting, listening. So if you ever hear your name whispered outside your window at night, especially in a voice you recognize, do not answer. Because according to the legend, if it sounds almost human, it probably isn't.
Thank you for listening to Black Grave. And remember, some stories are better left in the dark. Black Grave.